Fuck it, let this be the intro. I don't really care for any of these things, but it's March Madness, so let's see if anything can happen.
3 seconds to go. Takes it all the way.
How about that for an intro?
That's gonna count. Yes, it will. Official on the right indicated that that's going to count.
See, now we should probably start the show. See, everything you heard before was probably a warm-up. I got thousands of songs we could do. I could be here till 5 o'clock in the fucking morning. Don't give a fuck. Just like, you know, like crazy. So that real hip-hop is over.
Kendrick got me standing up and shit. God damn it. Fucking intro. We're getting right to this. I need to say something immediately. Music is subjective. I don't give a shit what anybody says. Music is subjective. It seems like some of y'all have forgot this. Why do you think there's so many different genres of music? Not everyone's gonna like a certain sound. Like, you might bust out some banging, I might fucking bust a move or two, but you might hate that shit. And that's because of my musical background living in a Hispanic family. Your musical background and your appreciation for music is gonna shape what you like. I personally love jazz. You might hate jazz. You might love The Weeknd. I might hate The Weeknd. But what must be maintained is the respect for each other's opinions. So don't sit here and tell me that I'm wrong or that it's not, it's this and that. No, this is me. This is me, my point of view. So now, I will do my best as the guy in front of the camera to eloquently express my views on how I feel about this album. Let me also say this. I don't understand hip-hop as something that you study objectively. I don't review, I don't talk, I don't listen to hip-hop objectively like this is some sort of object that I'm looking at. No, I'm in this. You're in the culture. You are part of the culture. You are the culture, and the music is an extension of the culture. So when I'm sitting here talking about music, I'm not talking about it as this, I'm looking at this faraway object and I'm poking it. No, I'm talking about it as if I was on a roller coaster and yo, I'm telling you how this bitch feels like. I'm like, whoa, this shit was fun, this shit was not fun. So that's how I talk about albums. I'm not like this and then that and then this happened and no. Fuck that. Another thing, I am not a Dick writer. I love his previous work. I'm a big fan of it, but in no way am I on the Kendrick dick. So just let me clear that up as well. And another thing that I gotta fucking clear up, something that's really been pissing me off. This shit always happens, but it seems like the people who have loved this album are like, to anyone who doesn't love this album, they're like, well, you don't know music and you're stupid. Even if that's true, they are stupid and they can't understand certain concepts, you shouldn't say that. Because then you get the people who are lukewarm about an album, who get all this fucking overload of Kendrick dick writing, that they just take it to the other extreme. And they're like, this shit's garbage, it's mediocre, I don't like the beats, it sounded horrible, this album's shit, I don't like his voice, he's overrated. And it's just these two extremes. This shit pisses me off. This always, you guys know this shit always happens when albums come out, so I needed to get that off my chest. With all of that being said, let's fucking go. Kendrick Lamar to Pimp a Butterfly album review. I had a very good idea of what this album was gonna sound like, and I had a pretty good idea that this was not gonna be what we've gotten previously from Kendrick Lamar, judging from the singles that had came out and the live performance on the Cobra Report. I saw what sort of space Kendrick was creatively. He was in this politically conscious, funk, jazz, influenced state of being. And so I had an idea of what this album could sound like when I first heard it, but I didn't place any expectations on it. I heard one of Kendrick's interviews where he's saying don't expect anything. So I was like, alright, I won't place any expectations on this album, but I have an idea of what this could sound like. My first impressions listening to this at 1 a.m. when it dropped out of nowhere was something very close to Big Quint's first reaction review. If you guys haven't seen that, I'll post that in the description. But if you want a good idea of how my first reaction was, it was something close to that. I've been so fucking taken back by so many things on this album. Like, I literally haven't listened to anything else since this album's come out. I can't remember the last time I felt that way about an album. And it's not a review thing either, because even when I review albums, I'll have it and I'll place like a certain time for me to listen to it, but throughout the rest of my day I'll listen to whatever the fuck I want to listen to. But with this, I have no urge to listen to anything else. I was constantly brought back to this album. Maybe the only recent thing that I've listened to other than this is Aquemini and Shades of Blue. That's about it for me, and that speaks to the sound of this album. Holy fuck, I love the sound of this album. Ugh. Funk, blues, jazz, neo-soul, classic West Coast shit, and modern hip-hop all having like a massive fucking orgy in an album. And I love every bit of it. And I knew immediately that people weren't gonna like this shit. Like when I heard George Clinton on that first track, and he's like, in a state of euphoria, and Thundercat with this monster ass bass lines, I was like, woo, 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 this is my shit. But I was like, you know what, people aren't gonna like this, I already know. And this was kept constant throughout the whole album. Nothing about this was easily digestible. This is not your local fast food burger. This is like an exotic fruit that you gotta climb Mount Everest for. You gotta fight a bear. You gotta grab the fruit with rubber gloves, and you gotta offer it to the natives so they can bathe it in child tears for you to finally be able to eat it. But then once you eat it, it's so fucking worth it. And that's the thing about this album. You're gonna have people who are gonna love the journey. They're gonna love climbing the mountain. They're gonna wear the bear's skin. They're gonna talk to the natives, have great conversation, have laughs, maybe pick up a wife, who knows, right? And they're gonna love the journey. But then you're gonna have people who get halfway up the mountain and be like, I wanna go home. And then you're gonna have people who maybe finally beat the bear, but then they just straight eat the fruit, so it doesn't end up tasting as good. If any of that made any sense to you. And that's the thing, Kendrick kept me on my toes from track to track. You can take this one section where you can have this sexy, groovy, smooth ass track in these walls, to then the darkest track on the album, like this blues, emotion driven, old Eminem sounding track with You, and then you go to this banger ass beat and Alright. I mean, you have some classic West Coast G-Funk shit and hood politics. You have some free jazz shit, spoken word with For Free. And like Fantano said, you have some like Hey Ya sort of sounding track in I. The only thing that I can closely compare this album to is, once again, Outkast. And that's another point that I wanted to make. If Andre 3000 was to ever make a solo album, I think it would be some southern version of this album. And it's just because of the creativity and eccentric throwback feel, everything about it would just remind me like, yo, you know what? Andre 3000 would probably make some shit like this if he made a solo album. He has reminded me of Andre 3 Stacks with like a sprinkle of Tupac. This album is just oozing with well thought out, hard-hitting, unapologetic, daring creativeness. It's just oozing out of this album. Not only is the music behind this album so fucking crazy with well thought out hooks, layered production and skits and layered ad-libs and transition tracks and but the content and the concepts on this album are just as uneasily digestible. I took the album personally as completely reflecting the very last poem that Kendrick read on the Mortal Man about the caterpillar and the butterfly. From the caterpillar leaving Compton and then becoming this big rap star, Wesley's Theory, King Kunta, but then trying to get pimped and manipulated by the system, or Lucy, or Lucifer if you will, for free, these walls to an extent, for sale. So while he's dealing with all that, he's also dealing with his own internal struggles about leaving the hood and whether he's too removed and who he is as a person, as a black man in America, and trying to find these answers. Institutionalized You. Once he goes back home, which can either be interpreted as him going back to Compton, or the way I took it, going back to the motherland, Africa, which I'll explain. He's given a new perspective on life, and so he comes back to the hood, tries to drop game on everybody, and tries to, I guess, just preach different lessons and stuff like that about loving yourself, that all this race shit doesn't matter and this, that, and the other. But then he gets to a point where he realizes that these efforts only can go so far, which is basically all the tracks from Mama to the end. But then you realize that this has really just been a conversation that Kendrick's been having with Tupac. I also took the poem that was being recited throughout the album as sort of giving context to each upcoming track. Sort of like, you know how in plays they'll do those little monologues in the beginning where they'll say, well, this is happening and now that this and that. So I thought Kendrick was doing that to give context to each track, which was really creative because it kept everything really cohesive and making sense. So that was really well done. Some shit that I love on the album. The extremely funky ass production that this album breaks open with. It starts up with James Brown's famous "Hit Me." I was like, this is my shit. And you hear George Clinton, and then you hear Thundercat. Those two took that track to another level. Just so funky. Love this track. Opening track set the mood for the rest of the album. The insane spoken word format of 4-3, yo. What the fuck? Like the instrumental in the back is this insane free jazz beat, and Kendrick, what he's spitting about, you know, his dick ain't free to the system that's trying to pimp him. He's not gonna sell his soul, I guess. And the way he delivered that with this flow, oh my god, this was a crazy, easily one of the standout tracks on this album. King Kunta's funky ass beat as well. You'll actually have me, ooh. But this wasn't one of my standout tracks. I didn't feel the content was as dense as the rest of the album and the rest of the tracks on the album, but it made sense and I understood it. So I definitely fuck with the beat and everything about that track. It wasn't one of my personal favorites. The opening event, Institutionalized, reminded me of some Outkast shit, just the way like the multiple voices, like free my OGs, like that just reminded me of some Outkast shit. And then the beat switches up with that smooth ass beat, yo. Oh my god, that was dope as hell. I love the second verse where Kendrick's rapping from the perspective of one of his friends who's criticizing the people that Kendrick fucks with, like as far as the different rappers who aren't coming back and giving back to the hood like Kendrick is, and how they're upset with that. These Walls was the sexiest, grooviest, smoothest production on this album. I love the allusion to the, like, I guess the vaginal walls and these walls, and I guess being trapped in the instant pleasure that comes with, and him taking advantage of his influence, like he said in the poem or whatever, but then also relating it back to one of the people who shot Kendrick's friend and Sing About Me, and how he's trapped in the walls, and all that. That third verse was crazy. And then you go to the complete opposite, the darkest, most vulnerable, most emotion driven, all out track in You. Holy fuck. The way that track starts with "Loving You was complicated," that shit was crazy, and I'm like, oh my god. And he's going in about how he hates himself and he's just shitting on himself, and then it changes to him in a hotel room and being drunk and venting, and yo, that, oh my, I let that track going, wow, what the fuck did I just listen to? That was insane for Kendrick to not just be like, oh yeah, I'm a piece of shit, this, that, and the other. He took a completely just super vulnerable, open approach to it. So dark, the crazy ass beat, crazy track, easily one of my standout tracks. And you get the banging ass bumping in the whip track with Alright, yo, that beat was monstrous. I'm pretty sure they said that Pharrell co-produced this track, so well done with the beat as well. And this was Kendrick, I guess, overcompensating for the previous track and how much of a piece of shit he felt. So he's going out and spending all this and then be like, yeah, we gonna be alright. This night, just kind of letting loose. So that was also one of my favorite tracks. That's one of the tracks that you can play outside of the album and it still sounds good and it makes sense. Shit bounced in the whip, definitely. For Sale had me fucked up for a second, but conceptually it all made sense. And this is where Lucy or Lucifer confronts Kendrick and offers him, I guess, a contract to sell his soul for all the great things. Obviously from the two previous tracks, he's kind of feeling like a piece of shit and he doesn't really know where to go. So he says, I went looking for answers. And so he goes and Lucy approaches him when he's most vulnerable. And I love how the instrumentation of the back was really ironic to Lucifer coming and meeting Kendrick, but it totally makes sense, because think about it. If Lucifer was ever to approach you, he wouldn't approach you like, oh, Lucifer, big mean devil. No, he'd approach you exactly how Kendrick portrayed it on you. Nice and opening and smooth, because he's trying to seduce you, so it totally makes sense with that. And I love how Kendrick would pitch his voice higher and deeper to make it seem like Lucy is definitely not what she seems to be. But then obviously Kendrick doesn't take the bait, so you get to the next track, Mama. This is where I'm saying I'm pretty sure he's talking about going back to Africa. It can't be interpreted as him going back to Compton. I understand if you took it as that as well, but I took it more as him going back to Africa. And let me explain. Because in the last verse, Kendrick's talking about a kid tossing a football with his ashy black ankles. Who kicks American footballs with their feet? You can't do that. I'm assuming he's talking about soccer. And who in Compton's playing soccer? So... And then you have the kid talking about look at your ancestry and stuff like that. So again, I took that as another allusion to Africa. I don't know, just for me, that's just the way I took it. And then the last, I guess, bit of the track where Kendrick's going crazy. He's having like a midlife crisis basically. But I love that shit, love that track. Mama was smooth as hell. At first it did feel a little bit out of place, and I'll say the same thing with Institutionalized. They felt a little too smooth at first when I was listening to it compared to all the other tracks that are just so hard hitting in your face. Once you go through it multiple times, it's needed because it's very smooth. It's a good cleanser, yet the content is still as thought-provoking. The classic G-Funk synthesizer sprinkle beat in hood politics. Love that shit. I took this track as Kendrick talking about him going back to the hood and being exposed to all the hood rat shit that's going on. I guess his homie's taking him through that. The beat on that was a really nice change, so I fucking love that track. How much a dollar cost was insane, man. And the instrumentation totally fit that track and how dramatic and I guess monumental it felt. James Fauntleroy, whatever, did his thing on the hook, and Ronald Isley did his thing on the production, obviously. And here's the thing, because you know at the end of the track, throughout the track, he's talking about different homeless people that will approach him. At the end of the track, he realizes that it's Jesus. So at first I didn't realize that. I thought it was just a homeless man claiming he's Jesus. So it didn't hit me as hard at first. So I was like, okay, I don't really understand where this is going. And then it didn't really answer any questions for me. But then the more I listened to the album, I was like, maybe it is Jesus. And when I realized that it was Jesus, I was like, bruh, what an insane ending, man. That shit was crazy. I think this is a big turning point for Kendrick, where he's really hit with the reality of what he's facing back at home. So that was easily a standout track. The perspective that Kendrick took as a field slave approaching another slave, I'm guessing it's a house slave, on complexion, was interesting. It was an interesting approach to do. And Rapsody did her thing on her verse. It wasn't overly complicated, it wasn't overly lyrical, but it was very straight to the point. It was effective. So Rapsody just perfectly fit in that track without being overbearing or anything like that. So that was a dope track. And shout out to P-Walk on the cuts as well. That was dope as hell. I noticed that too. And this is where I just felt like Kendrick again. He's spitting game about complexion, how like I guess insignificant that is. But the way that led up to Black of the Berry was insane, man. When I heard Black of the Berry in the context of the album, yo, I wanted to fucking like cry, dude. Like I was just so taken back. And it was just that much more effective in the album than it was as a single. Because when the single dropped, I was like, holy fuck. But in the album and how that all led up to that worked so well. Again, I took this as Kendrick's spin game as well. About, I guess, what he feels is the hypocrisy of getting mad at the system directly killing blacks. But then gangbanging's basically just doing the job of the system for them. So that was, you know, that track was easily one of my favorites as well. And then the one after that with You Ain't Gonna Lie, Mama Said. And I took this as, again, Kendrick spitting more game to the hood about how you don't have to perpetuate a certain stereotype and a certain image to, I guess, fit in. Dope track, really smooth production as well. After that with the live version of I easily prefer this version better than the single version that released. The person who ended up interrupting Kendrick from the crowd. At first I didn't really get it, but then once I watched the Needle Drop's review on it, it did make sense. It did seem like Kendrick was trying to say that he's trying to preach all this, you know, I love myself, this and the other, all this shit that he's been talking about for the previous tracks, but it seems like it's falling on deaf ears because people don't want to hear that shit. That gave me a better perspective on that track. Fuck with that a lot more in the album. And then the ending with Kendrick talking about the niggas and that being like the Ethiopian word for king of kings. I already knew what that shit was talking about, so when I heard that, I was like, yep, I already know what this is, because I watched the KRS-One interview where he was talking about the etymology of the M-word. That was dope that he added that in that track. And then Mortal Man, not only was that track dance deep and the content was dope, but man, it fucking explained the whole album. I didn't expect it to wrap up an album like that, man. With obviously the 2 poems, he finally recites the finishing poem. Then he ends up fucking talking to Pac. Okay, let me say this. When that interview was going on, that had me so fucked up, because I was like, is this Pac? But then I was like, there's no way, because of the way that it was flowing so well. It felt so fluent and natural that I was like, okay, this can't be Pac. This has to be like Top Dog or something. So I'm listening to the interview and I'm like, okay, this is him talking to Top Dog or whatever, right? And then the ending where he recites the final poem that explains the whole damn album, and then he's like, what do you think about that, Pac? And then when he says the final Pac, I was like, holy shit, that is Pac. That blew me away. I literally sat there, I finished this album the first time I listened to it around like 3 a.m. I literally laid down for 10 minutes trying to take in what I just experienced. Holy fuck, how did he Overall, I fucking love this album more than I've loved any album since I've started this YouTube shit, and even before that, man. And I tell you this, that I haven't felt the need to listen to anything else, because this is really unprecedented for me. It's very, very rare that I don't want to listen to anything, that I've been so captivated and drawn to a single album like this, because I've not usually done that. Even with albums that I've given praise to before, I haven't just been solely wanting to listen to this. And it might be due to the shit that has dropped recently with Big Sean and Fan. So this was definitely a really nice breath of fresh air for me. But I'm telling you, I love this album. You can give it whatever rating you want to, I don't care. And usually when I listen to music, I use the music to take me somewhere mentally. Like, oh, I'm listening to this, okay, I'm gonna take this to wherever I want to take it, right? And it's very, very difficult for an artist and an album to take me where they want to take me, where they're supposed to take me. It depends. Maybe if it's like Slick Rick, that I'm actually in the story like that. But this album did such a good job in taking me exactly where it wants me to take it. This requires all of my undivided attention. Anything that I'm doing, that album comes on, I'm like, okay, I'm here. I'm not mentally out here. I'm in this album, completely submerged by it. I'm probably gonna have to take a break from this album in order not to kill it, because I've listened to this thing maybe 9 times since it's come out, and I'm recording this on a Thursday, so this has been on replay. So I might have to take a break for a little bit to just not overdo it. But you can bet your ass as soon as I'm done taking that break that this is gonna be heavy in the rotation, man. If there's one way for me to explain it, just oozing with creativity, man. That was the thing that I took from this, man. Oozing with originality and creativity, but drawing from funk and blues and jazz influences, doing it Kendrick's way. And that's what I appreciate so much, is the music, the songwriting ability, and everything that went into the song. I'm not just noticing the lyrics and the beats, I'm noticing the ad-libs, the extra sounds, and the amount of effort that went into this album. And that's what I appreciate so much from this. I honestly don't see anything beating album of the year for me after this album. Like, it's literally Kendrick and everything else competing for second place. I really don't see anything drawing my attention like this album has. We'll see as the year progresses. I'll do a midway favorite albums. Subscribe to the channel, like, favorite, comment, do all that shit. Let me know what you thought of the album. Let me know if you loved it as much as I did. Let me know if you hated it, but be respectful, remember. And just remember, this is one man's opinion. I am not here to try and persuade you to agree with me or anything like that. You can completely disagree with me and I will live on with my life perfectly fine. We don't have to agree. I'm just telling you how this album has made me feel. That's all this is. So if you don't agree, you think I'm dick riding, that you can have that opinion. Don't worry about it. I'm not trying to force my opinion down your throat. This is just what I thought. Thank you, Kendrick. I needed this. I'm out. I'm fucking done.